The chisel struck too hard, and the stone split straight through the name Tomas had spent 3 days carving. He stared at the broken slab as if the man named there had injured him all over again. Then he hurled the chisel across the quarry. It rang against the wall, scattering birds from the cliffs. Around him stood hundreds of stones, each bearing a name, a date, and a wound he refused to forget. Together they formed the monument Tomas had been building for 17 years. Tomas had once been the finest stonemason in the valley. His hands could draw leaves from granite and make cold marble seem to breathe. People traveled from distant villages to hire him for fountains, doorways, and memorials. But praise never stayed with him as long as an insult. Payment could not erase an old humiliation. Friendship could not soften a betrayal. Every wrong lodged inside him like grit beneath the skin. The first stone had been small. He carved it after his brother sold a piece of family land without consulting him. On the front, Tomas cut his brother's name. On the back, he recorded the price, the date, and every bitter word spoken during their quarrel. He placed the stone at the edge of the quarry, intending only to preserve the truth. Yet once the truth was carved, he began noticing how many other truths deserved stone. He carved the merchant who paid him late, the neighbor who mocked his clothes, the apprentice who abandoned him for another workshop, and the woman who had promised to marry him before choosing someone else. He carved careless remarks, broken agreements, unanswered letters, and apologies that arrived too slowly. Some stones commemorated injuries so slight that Tomas could no longer remember the faces behind them. Still, he remembered the pain, and pain was enough. As the years passed, the monument rose into a dark, uneven tower. Tomas gave it his best hours. Customers waited while he deepened letters no rain could wash away. His roof sagged, his tools rusted, and meals grew plain, but the tower became magnificent. It could be seen from the road below, standing against the mountain like a second cliff. Travelers assumed it honored heroes. Tomas never corrected them. He wanted the monument to prove that his suffering mattered. He imagined that one day every person who had wronged him would stand before it and understand the weight they had placed upon his life. Some of those people had moved away. Some had forgotten the quarrels. Several had died. Tomas continued carving their names because forgetting seemed like surrender, and forgiveness seemed like declaring that nothing had happened. One autumn morning, an old woman climbed the quarry path carrying 2 empty clay jars on a wooden pole. Her name was Mara. She lived beyond the eastern ridge, where a fire had destroyed several farms many years before. Tomas knew only fragments of her history. He had heard that she once had a husband, 3 sons, a daughter, a house full of music, and fields that stretched almost to the river. Mara stopped beside the broken slab. She looked at the crack, then at the tower of grievances. Her eyes moved slowly over the carved names. She did not admire the craftsmanship or condemn the purpose. She set down the pole and rubbed one shoulder. "The spring below the quarry is still running," she said. "Help me carry water to my house." Tomas almost laughed. He pointed toward the ruined stone and the unfinished tower. Mara lifted the pole again, placed it across her shoulders, and began descending alone. One jar knocked against her hip. Her steps were careful but unsteady. Tomas watched until she slipped on loose gravel and caught herself against a thorn bush. With an irritated breath, he retrieved his chisel, then followed her. At the spring, Mara filled both jars to the rim. Tomas took the pole and nearly dropped it. The jars were larger than they appeared, and the path to her house climbed sharply beyond the ridge. Water spilled onto his boots with every step. Mara walked beside him, carrying a smaller bowl. Whenever she saw an animal's drinking hollow beside the trail, she poured in a little water. At a dry fig tree, she emptied the last of the bowl around its roots. By the time they reached her house, Tomas's shoulders burned. The building was scarcely more than a repaired shell. New beams rested beside blackened stones left from the fire. Along one wall stood 4 small wooden boxes filled with rosemary. Each box bore a name. Tomas recognized them as the names of Mara's children and husband. He waited to see whether she would touch the boxes with anger or recount the people responsible for the blaze. Mara poured the water into a large basin. She washed dust from the rosemary leaves, kneaded flour, and filled a trough for a thin gray donkey. Then she handed Tomas bread still warm from the oven. Behind the house, she used the remaining water to soften a patch of earth. Together, they planted winter onions in straight rows. She saved the final cup for the fig sapling near the door. The next morning, Mara returned to the quarry with the empty jars. Tomas had already begun replacing the broken slab. She did not inspect his work. She simply rested the pole on the ground. After a long silence, Tomas set down his chisel and carried the jars again. This became their routine. Each morning Tomas worked on his monument until Mara appeared. Then he descended to the spring, filled the jars, and crossed the ridge. Some days they repaired her roof. Some days they cleared stones from the garden. When rain came, they shaped channels to guide it toward the fig tree. Mara rarely spoke about the fire. She kept no stone naming the careless soldiers whose abandoned cooking flame had raced through the fields. One afternoon, Tomas found her rebuilding a section of wall. Among the rubble lay a blackened lintel carved with 5 figures holding hands. It had once crowned the entrance to her family home. Mara brushed soot from the figures, turned the damaged carving over, and fitted it into the foundation beneath the new wall. The faces disappeared into the earth. On top of them, she placed fresh mortar and another stone. Tomas understood that she had not discarded what remained. She had changed what it was carrying. The old carving would no longer announce who had been lost. Hidden beneath the wall, it would help shelter whoever entered next. The following morning, Tomas stood before his monument before sunrise. Frost filled the carved letters, making every name gleam white. He read the record from bottom to top. There was his brother, who had later tried to reconcile. There was the merchant, who had paid late because his child was ill. There was the apprentice, whose new workshop had fed 2 families during a hard winter. There were the dead, the absent, the ashamed, and the unaware. Above them all was Tomas, still serving every injury long after its author had left. He lifted his hammer and struck the lowest stone. The sound rolled across the quarry. He struck again, not wildly, but with the control of a master craftsman. By noon, a section of the monument lay dismantled. He loaded the stones onto a cart and pulled them across the ridge. Mara met him beside the garden with a bucket of mortar. She examined the first stone, turned its carved face inward, and helped him set it along the edge of a new water channel. For weeks, Tomas carried stones away from the tower. He did not smash every name or pretend the wounds had never occurred. Some stones became steps. Others strengthened Mara's walls, bordered vegetable beds, or lined the path to the spring. The deepest inscriptions faced the soil. Rain still touched them, but no longer gathered there. It flowed over the hidden words and continued toward roots. When Tomas reached the first stone, the one bearing his brother's name, he sat with it until evening. 17 years had not restored the land or repaired their closeness. The stone could not do so either. At dawn, he carried it to the narrowest part of the stream and laid it flat between two banks. Villagers began stepping on it to cross without soaking their feet. The tower eventually became a low circle open to the sky. Tomas left a few uncarved stones there as seats. He repaired his workshop and returned to carving fountains, lintels, and small birds for children. He also continued carrying water with Mara. Forgiveness did not erase his memory. It released his hands from the duty of building a home for every hurt. Years later, the fig tree beside Mara's door spread broad shade across the repaired wall. Travelers rested beneath it and drank from a basin fed by the channel Tomas had built. Few noticed that the channel was made from old grievances. Fewer still could see the names turned inward beneath moss, soil, and running water. What had once stood above Tomas like a prison now carried something useful toward life. Many years after that, in a city far from Tomas's valley, a woman named Claire sat at her office desk rereading a message from a colleague who had taken credit for her work. She had saved screenshots, drafted an angry reply, and begun composing a list of every previous slight. Each line felt like another stone placed carefully on top of the last. Then she noticed a new employee struggling alone with a stack of event supplies. Claire closed the message, stood, and helped carry the boxes downstairs. Later, she documented the work issue plainly and addressed it without cruelty. She kept the facts, set a boundary, and refused to spend the evening enlarging the monument in her mind. At home, Claire used the time she had expected to lose to resentment. She cooked with her daughter, called her sister after months of distance, and placed her phone face down while they ate. The wrong had not become right. It had simply stopped deciding what her hands would carry next. Somewhere within her, an old carved stone turned inward, and water moved over it toward living roots. Keep this lesson with you, and return whenever your mind needs a quieter path.